Hello everyone and welcome back. This is Dr. Randy Green. Today we're going to cover how where we place our attention can generate stress. You know, stress, that thing that seems to be everywhere. We've all experienced it. We all constantly experience it. Isn't that true about you? It's not uncommon to hear people say that something or someone caused them to behave or feel a certain way. You know that that's definitely true, right? How many times have you said to yourself or other people that something that occurred made you be a certain way? You know, Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." Think about that. And to offer such consent, you must have placed your attention there. So how do we know where to place our attention at any given moment? Well, we don't operate directly on the world, but act in response to information from that world as we perceive it to be. This is a very important distinction, people, because this is true as we are always filtering data before we recognize it as a conscious concept. By filtering, I mean using our sensory modalities: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory, and I'd even throw in proprioceptive, vestibular. We're using these senses, this set of filters, which by the way is always present in its entirety, in any given situation, whole form, regardless how the attention is organized to track the data that's being filtered. What this translates into is that someone might experience only one or two senses, say visual and auditory, as inputs present in any given situation, any given moment, even though all of them are there in that moment. Remember, they're their whole form. And so, filtering, as it were, has to do with where we place our attention at any given moment. Now, I have a very important saying for you to memorize, and you will notice this to be extremely important to you as we proceed through the rest of these video presentations. And as you go through your life, when you're out to dinner, when you're at work, even when you're asleep, where you place your attention is where you get to your result. Where you place your attention is where you get your result. I want to reintroduce you to the guys. Over here we have Mocha in the distance on the far right, and then there's Chip. They both acknowledge their existence, which is good. They are my assistants. They are exquisite. They're always at their best. And their attention is generally where they want it the most. They don't worry about things like, for example, they're not really upset about what's going on in the economy, okay? They don't like lose sleep worrying if they're going to get food the next day. That's my job. No, I'm kidding. But they're very, very centered, focused, and at their best. And that's how children are too. All right? Now, have you ever been in a situation where, for example, during a work-related meeting, once somebody presents a novel idea, inevitably another person will immediately counter with what could go wrong with that idea? You know the type. Somebody says something and someone goes, "Well, I hear what you're saying, but..." It's like they have to say, "I hear what you're saying." They haven't heard anything, and you know what I mean. But people still have to sort that way. Their filters are sorting for what could go wrong. That's the sense modality they have consciously available to them at any given moment, even though the rest of them are there, whole form. What about government? It's the same thing. People in government, in Congress, what they're sorting for, what they're filtering based on what's being read, what they're reading, what's being said, is different depending on what the situation is, and very often it has to do with what could be a problem. It happens every day in Congress, and at home, and in school. Now, I know there are a lot of really good teachers out there, but there are also some who, well, for example, remember in elementary school when a teacher would ask a question like, "Anybody know who discovered America? Anybody, you know, who read last night's assignment?" And a bunch of hands go, "Oh, call on me, I know, I know." And who is the teacher looking for? You got it. The one who didn't raise his hand. That's when students learn certain strategies about if you don't know, just put your hand up there anyway. The probability is no one will call on you. But the idea is, who is the teacher looking for? Where is her or his attention being placed? Too often, through this filtering process, we train our brains to sort exquisitely for problems. Brains become masters of problem sorting and problem finding. And then, ironically, once we find the problem, we're looking for ways to try to avoid them. We sort for stress, and once present, we try to manage it. Well, in short, we learn to use ourselves, our natural selves, very poorly. Now, the problem, of course, with sorting for problems is that once you have them present, you can't not have them, right? For example, when I tell you to, I want you to imagine that your left ear is a problem, and I want you to think about trying to manage it without trying to think about it. On the count of 3, ready? 1, 2, 3. Try to manage your left earring and not have the feeling of that left earring. If you're not wearing an earring, take your ear whole form. Practice through time, this liability becomes effortless and more sophisticated as we continue to live inside the problem state. The problem state means where we filter information. Where are we going? What are we looking for? We're looking for problems, which is really good if you're a phlebotomist. But if you're a person in most every other walk of life, and what makes you right, so to speak, is finding what works, then sorting for problems is just not necessarily the best way to go. Stress is a part of life. It's a byproduct of everything I've been speaking about. It becomes ubiquitous. It's everywhere. You can't not experience it. It's just everywhere when you organize your world around problems. And the best we are taught to hope for when we're being this way is developing coping strategies to manage it. But once again, in order to manage something, stress for example, what must be present first? Now let's see if you've been paying attention. What must be present first in order to manage stress? I'm waiting. You got it. Stress, of course. One of the age-old problems is recognizing the presence of something you do not want, for example, stress, and then trying not to have that. This is a paradox. It's at the core of most therapies. And what do I mean by that? Well, in trying to uncover why a particular problem is there, you're immersing yourself in the very thing you want to no longer be true of you. Think about it. A more useful question is, where do I hold stress? How do I make the decisions that seem to maintain it, to perpetuate it? But an even more potent question is, what do I know to be true of me when I'm at my best? Absolutely. In other words, where stress is not. And how specifically can I reestablish the natural presence that are present since birth when I'm operating this way? See you next time.